Hello and welcome everybody to today's attributed session. As usual, I'm Stefan. I'm one of the co-founders of Dream Data. And with me today, I actually have a friend, but not just a friend, also somebody who knows a lot about B2B marketing. And you could say that today's session is a little bit selfish or a little bit therapy for me because we are Dream Data do a lot of product launches every year or feature launches, some of them. And we do some stuff that work, and we probably also make a lot of mistakes. So today I'm really here to try to learn from you, Mikkel. You guys released a big book about how to do B2B product launches.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to learn about what's in that book today. And I'll share the link to where people can go download the book in the comments as we speak. But for those that don't live close to you, maybe you can give an explanation about like maybe your own background and a little bit about what you do at Quadrant and what types of clients that it is that you help out.
Yeah, of course. A pleasure, Stefan. Yeah, my name is Mikkel Bach. I'm a partner at Quadrant Consulting. It's a management consulting company based in Copenhagen. We work solely sort of with B2B companies on all things growth, from helping private equity firms assess the commercial potential of acquisition targets to developing growth strategies, but also a lot of capability building, everything that comes to processes, setting up new functions, training, AI-enabled tools, whatnot. So pretty focused in terms of B2B growth, but then we do more or less full stack from commercial due diligence to strategy to a lot of execution support. My own journey, I'm beginning of my 40s, 15 years into my career, and I've more or less actually the whole time worked with B2B sales and marketing. So I know very little about sort of supply chain planning and whatnot. It's more or less from the get-go been about B2B sales and marketing. I spent a few years in a biotech company in Denmark, and then I jumped agency side. Spent, I think, 8 years at an agency where I was only focused on B2B companies of different sorts and sizes. And then I joined Quadrant almost in its infancy 6-7 years ago. And we've grown to about 35 people based here in Copenhagen and supporting blue chips, private equity firms, and scale-ups in all things growth and commercial, I would say.
Super good. I guess my first question is then kind of how come you guys decided to write a book about B2B launches? Was there any kind of moment where you guys talked together and decided there's a book missing here somewhere?
Yeah, it's always interesting, and you know that, Stefan, also being a little bit of a creator yourself, it's when sort of when does that spark out of idea, where does that land? It started actually with my colleague Brian, I think, taking a shower, but that's another story. but he spent 6-7 years in industry doing a lot of product launches, and I supported agency side with a lot of product launches. And it actually started with a bit of a discussion here, and my colleague Brian, he joined Quadrant a year after me or something like that, with a sort of a bit of a dismal statistic, right? Depending on the source, and we did our own research, but somewhere between 50 to 70% of product launches are deemed a failure, right? And we talked a little bit about like, what is that? Okay, maybe some of those products shouldn't have been built in the first instance, fair enough. But on the other hand, a lot of money goes into these product launches, and a lot of them still fails. And then we had just this epiphany: is something sort of actually totally broken when it comes to launching products? And we gave ourselves sort of the time and the energy also to assess some of the launches we've been part of, the organizational reality that we've been part of, the projects we've done in Quadrant, and reflect a little bit about what is actually going on here. And then that was like a little bit of the background, and then we ended up with this metaphor of the Campfire Launch as as a little bit of a vision for how we believe launches should be handled. And so it started with the metaphor and the realization something is not working, and then we spent 3 or 4 years maturing that concept, to be frank, Stefan.
Oh, that long? I didn't actually know.
No, and then it materialized in a book this summer. So we did a very light book 3 years ago because we had already booked the venue. We had a major event, very expensive venue. We were at that point 13 people in Quadrant, and we really tried to punch a bit above our weight, and we just had to get something ready for that event. So 200 people from all over Scandinavia flying in, and then we sort of fast-tracked the book, but it was never fully completed. It was more like a light version of it, and then we completed it this summer also with additional experience acquired in the last 3 years.
Nothing like a good deadline to get yourself moving.
No, exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about so when you say fail, what does that look like? And maybe after the failure, what does like a good launch look like then?
Yeah, I think what is a failure? Well, I think it actually starts with to understand the economics around product launches. And this book is written, and all our experience is based solely on, let's say, more complex B2B launches. So smaller transactional launches or feature upgrades or B2C, chewing gum launches, they are not sort of part of the scope of this idea, just to be totally frank. So if you're talking like sort of more complex B2B product launch, what goes on? First and foremost, typically companies spends tens of millions of dollars on developing products. Right? So why are you developing product? You're developing product, you're funneling a lot of money and energy, and you want to recoup those money and potentially also earn a bit more on top of that, of course, once you go live with the product. So what is success? Success is about a fairly sort of quickly recouping that investment you put into developing the product, and then sort of maximize the commercial potential of the product. So it's not just a feeling, it's not just a sense of succeeding or not. There's a real sort of commercial logic, financial logic to it. Recouping the investment and then reaping any other rewards. And that's what it's all about. And that's, I think, the interesting discussion here, Stefan, because then we talk about, okay, so that's the financial logic, but what goes on then? Yeah, one thing that goes on is that you spend, again, 10 of millions of dollars on developing product, and then you spend 1/20 of that bringing that product to market. So there's typically a fundamental disconnect between how much you spend developing versus how much you spend commercializing it. And that, I think, why so? A lot of organizations, depending on where you're from, and a lot of the clients we work with, also sort of engineering, biotech, pharma, all these things, there is still this sort of prevailing belief that if you build it, they will come, right? So we are technically gifted. Let's develop all these fantastic products, and they will come. So we don't need to spend that much energy, resources, or money on actually bringing it to market. And I think the thing at the end of the day, when you sort of really scratch the surface, a lot of Western companies, a lot of them were built on sort of product superiority, but at the end of the day, increasingly, a lot of the products looks more and more the same. So incremental innovations, adding a little bit of additional flavor and new capabilities, but it's not a totally sort of new category they're launching typically. So this thing about building it, they will come. It only works if it's radically different or radically better than what's already out there, and that's very rarely the case for a lot of Western.
Even in that case, you still need to get the message to the market that you have actually released a new product that is exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one of the things that goes on. Another thing that then then it's often, unfortunately, treated a launch is treated a little bit like a marketing campaign. Let's do some assets. So you start going through the motions of developing some core assets, checking off boxes, and marketing has done their job, right? We've developed the assets.
Yeah.
What we're preaching is that it should be much more of a commercialization effort, where you look much broader at the total sort of spectrum of commercial levers you have, from pricing to go to market, to positioning the product, to ensuring it's available wherever you wherever it can be offered, working with channels, ecosystem partners, all these things, right? So too often product launches, when things are brought to market, is often reduced to something more akin to a marketing campaign, which is a small piece of it. There's so much more to it.
I'm just thinking, we have never ever done kind of an analysis like how many developer hours went into developing this feature and how much money have we now made on this specific feature.
No.
And like how much marketing money did we spend kind of getting the message distributed to our customers.
No, and that's the basic sort of financial logic of things. You want to recoup that investment, right? And you do that through different monetization strategies and lifetime value calculations. There's different things, but that's at the end of the day what you need to do, right? And then I think another topic building on the what goes wrong theme is that I have two more that are important to they all also highlight in the book, is the sort of the go-to-market chain is never sort of stronger than the weakest link, right? So typically what you see is you have an internal audience, and if you have in complex industries, you really need your reps to understand what's going on, how to position the product, maybe in a wider portfolio against specific competitors, aligned to certain needs, all these things. Then you also, a lot of companies also have different types of channel partners, distributors, resellers, whatever it can be. And then, of course, finally, you have some sort of end customer that needs to adopt this product, right? And
I oftentimes forget how simple our dream data world is compared to those really, really big companies as you guys work with.
If you are selling a multi-million dollar production line or something like that, it's a very sophisticated route to market with different influencers and all these things. And if you don't take care of those different intermediaries, it can actually make or break your launch. So again, it's not just about launching a product, doing end customer communication, talking about how fantastic we are, and things will just magically happen. There's a lot of steps in between typically. And then maybe the final one, Stefan, is more on the organizational alignment piece, especially in very global, complex companies where you're bringing stuff to market in a global context. So within the global team, you have product teams, you have sales teams, you have marketing, you have maybe even strategy people involved in a potential launch, right? And then you have a local sales and service organization sitting somewhere in Azerbaijan, right? So how the hell do you connect all these things and ensure accountability and alignment through that system? It's also extremely tricky.
Wow.
So the thing is, the revenue sits in Azerbaijan, right? Some companies have very big global key accounts, but a lot of revenue is also generated sort of on the street in Azerbaijan. So how do you connect those two worlds? And the thing is, there's 4 or 5 of these. 1 or 2 of those break, and your product is maybe not a revolutionary new sort of your innovation. Then the launch breaks. And then then you're
a lot of people are not happy then. So kind of that kind of it's really good to be reminded that there's a lot larger companies out there than what we are, where it's at least fairly easy to kind of coordinate stuff. But I really see this very large chain of people being very complex to get right. So then this book, you call it the Campfire Launch. Like what's up with the metaphor or the naming here?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. So we talked a little bit about some of the issues of root causes of why more than half of product launches don't succeed. Then you say, okay, why not? I think one of the things that at least our diagnosis is that a lot of B2B sort of go-to-market people and marketeers still apply a playbook from another era and from another type of company. We call that the rocket launch playbook. The rocket launch playbook is sort of what you would do if you're launching a new flavor of chewing gum, or you're launching like a blockbuster movie or something like that. Straight out of the gates, make the most noise you can in a sort of window of 2 or 3 months, and then move on to the next great thing, right? And that model works really well if you have a product that is, first of all, picks up very quickly in terms of adoption, and then dies out a little bit, right? It's also a little bit the iPhone model, right? Boom, burst, boom, burst. You can just layer this rocket model on top of those adoption curves. The big challenge is actually for a lot of complex B2B products, the adoption curve looks like this. And then if you look at the data, interestingly enough, a lot of, at least in very complex industries, defense, industrials, biotech, a lot of the workhorse products, they top in terms of revenue at year 10. So what happens, right?
That's a long process.
It's a long process. And why does that happen? It's because, again, a lot of buyers have a lot of inertia. You need to build familiarity with this new thing. A lot of complex product changes how you work, changes also, IT, for example, processes, all these sort of governing concepts that define how you run as a company.
Yeah.
If you need to change those things, it takes much more time, right? So it's easier not to do anything about it or go with what you've always done. That also means that the adoption curve for a lot of complex product are actually much longer than you would expect. So imagine that you have and whether it's 5 years, 3 years, or 10 years, doesn't matter that much. The key is if you spend all your launch energy in the first 3 months and you're only realizing less than 1% of the total lifetime value of that product, your investment is totally disconnected from how the product is actually adopted and bought, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big problem with the rocket model, because what happens is you move on to the next one, and then that quote unquote launch that now you need to commercialize that product does not get any love and attention at all anymore.
I think I can see us guilty of this one for sure. And I think it makes even more sense if you're dealing with very large organizations that can take quite a while to make decisions. You can't just say the message once. Maybe you need to say it 50 times before it actually finds its way to the budget of whoever needs to approve it at some point.
Yeah, and it's going to take a lot of time also for your reps to get accustomed and familiar and confident in this new product.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. There's a big lag effect, right? If you underestimate the internal readiness to actually sell the product, you end up doing this sort of bing bang marketing campaign, but the reps are still a bit insecure and not super confident in the product or in their ability to pitch the product. So they take the path of least resistance and pitch whatever they've always done, right?
Okay, in this world of then scarce resources, we never have enough headcount, we never have enough money. Let's call it an example, but we have this development department they're always building new stuff, but you don't have the marketing resources, the marketing budget to actually kind of continue or to do really do the long haul of making one message land before the next one comes out. How do you balance this pressure from the product team just squeezes on, and then but you can see the old one hasn't actually been adopted, and maybe we should be massaging the old message more before going out with a new message? No, it's not an easy answer.
No, but I think it's a good question, because I think it starts with accountability and proper governance. So you actually measuring that and being aware of it and creating a process post-launch that allow you to measure and assess and discuss these questions of prioritization. So I think, a lot of companies don't even have that in place. They launch, do the campaign, invest in some assets, and then they go blindsided to move on to the next thing. I think it starts with that type of accountability, actually looking at to what extent is the product being adopted. Also doing a little bit of due diligence on the launch. What are the adoption barriers? Is it an internal barrier? Is it an external one? Is it positioning? Is it pricing? Whatever your diagnostics tell you that you need to address, right?
And I guess and you have to kind of think full funnel in your company as well. Why are we releasing another product if the current product has not been adopted? And kind of maybe also thinking about what are the success criteria for before we start developing the product, even what does success look like?
Yeah, and that's why, and that's another pet peeve, right? Commercialization starts actually before you start developing the product, because commercialization should be baked in into how you develop them. So
Yeah.
that's an even bigger discussion. But you're totally right. And I think this thing about just keep launching products, if we're not really feel like we're on top of the quote unquote old one, is it meaningful to keep launching it, or should we maybe do a sort of at a corporate level, look at how we use resources, right, in the best and optimal way? And it could also be that the product we launch is just not that great because we developed something that the market actually didn't need. Or so it's just important to have that type of
it makes a lot of sense.
Um,
Cool, but when then we didn't look at how to do it the right way. What are the steps that companies that kind of gets it right, or at least what the book says is the right way to do product launches?
and then, it's not deterministic. So,
Yeah.
yes, there's a bit of a recipe in the book, but it doesn't mean that you follow that, then so probabilistically it should help improve your success.
Yeah.
So the business case should make sense. What are some of the good ones doing? What we are advising companies on, what we're seeing companies doing organically, and what is just frankly the right model is to transition to the Campfire model. And maybe I can use the Campfire model, Stefan, as a way to express how I believe there's a better way to launch. The Campfire is a different metaphor than the rocket launch, right? Because the Campfire can live on and on and on for many years, right?
Yeah.
Maybe days, but let's leave it at that. And how do you actually? So how do you build a campfire? A proper campfire is built by through a proper preparation, right? Setting up the fireplace, collecting the wood, setting up in the right order, and then ultimately, of course, applying some sort of spark or gasoline to light the fire. So I'm not saying you should not launch with a big bang.
Yeah.
You should launch with some sort of bang, so you spark it and light it on fire. I think the big change from this concept to how a lot of B2B product launches are handled today is probably what goes on after the initial launch. So everything post, now the product's on the shelves, we did the first spark, and our vision and the concept sort of charts a path where you spend a lot more time sort of tendering to the fire. Maybe you are expanding the fire, adding additional wood to the fire, additional gasoline, and keep the fire burning in much more sort of longer and more consistent manner, rather than just pulling all the gasoline at once and then moving on to a new campfire. So keep tending to the fire, keep adding gasoline and wood, and then hopefully it will pick up and stay alive. That's the metaphor. That was a bit of a conceptual presentation, but what does that?
Yeah.
What I can also talk a little bit about what that means then.
I think one of the things I'm thinking I should say this is that, like, you need some kind of temperature measure with your customers. Have they actually received the message? Have they tried the product? Like, when do you know if kind of you have put out your messaging well enough for the product to have a chance to be be purchased? Whereas, like, if you just made that big rocket launch and then that only hit like 10% of the addressable market, then one of the problems probably is that there's still 90% of the relevant people out there who didn't get the message. So there must be a lot of check mechanisms you can do along the way to kind of see whether that fire could continue to burn or not.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of different things, and that's actually another problem, Stefan, with the rocket launches. If you are only present in one window, it's very rare that I think the research says something like 3 to 5% of B2B buyers are typically in market at one point in time. So if you spend all your energy in a very short window, a lot of those people that are not in market, and when you're not in market, you're not attentive, you're not spending time absorbing information on a specific category or launch because you have a life and kids and all these things, right?
Yeah.
So the rocket launch also narrows your ability to actually penetrate the market because it's only 3 to 5% that's in market. So that creates another challenge with the rocket launch metaphor when you have, especially in B2B, where you're not buying new things all the time. To your point, how do you know? I think that's why the due diligence on a launch is an ongoing thing. It's not, is the launch going well, not well, 3 months in, was it a failure, was it not a failure? That's not really a meaningful thing to say, because it could be, again, that there's just a slow uptick because there's not that many people in the market. Maybe it's a big change and we need to build confidence among our salespeople because it's not something that customers can buy on their own. Maybe customers need to see familiarity with it. They need to understand, how does this fit into my world? When am I ready to understand and buy that? And that does not mean that reality does not necessarily sync 100% with your launch calendar, right?
Yeah.
So I would, another, a key point here is also not to deem a launch and a failure too early. So kill your babies with the bathwater, because you didn't see the hype materialize in great sales in week 1.
Yeah.
So the adoption and the revenue curve does not necessarily follow the hype curve, internal hype curve. Those things are two very different things. And that can be difficult sometimes for executives, which are very hype and, driven, and then on to the next one.
Yeah. That is something we don't do today. Like having like what does the 3 months after, or like 6 months or 12 months after launch actually look like? Should we like have scheduled events that kind of goes back to kind of to recall what we actually launched?
It's a recall, exactly, and of course you go into some sort of slow burn mode. So I acknowledge there needs to be some sort of spark and launch period, and you shouldn't take that and then stretch it for 20 years. And so you need a bit of a slow burn period. But I think there's also something about simply just learning from what you're experiencing in the field and creating a mechanism for feeding that information back into how we launch. So it could be 3 months down the line, Stefan. Hey, we freaking changed the positioning of this product, or pricing was off. We had a idea, we're changing it because this and that. And that requires that you are super attentive to what's going on, qualitatively and quantitatively, right? Are we seeing the revenue, but also be in contact with the reps, be in contact with customers, and figuring out what's going on. So I don't think there's like a checklist or do these 5 things, but being super attentive to what are the barriers that are holding us back, and why is it not picking up? I
think that's really good advice, Mikkel. To change the chapter a little bit, you also talk about prime your audience, which is something I think we like. That is something we do. I mean, I don't even know what you mean by saying prime your audience, but a few times we've been kind of teasing that a product is coming out, and then like the followers of our company starts knowing a little bit about what's being released before it's released. And then it seems to have worked quite well when we've done that, but it's not been any like structured or rational way that we have decided to do that. But what is it, like your concept of priming your audience? What does that entail?
One part of it could, for example, creating this pre-launch hype thing, right? That you're probably alluding to. I would still say, it's also great to spend a lot of those resources on the great things when they're coming. So it's also about how much energy to put into that pre-launch hype and priming piece. Priming is actually also a matter of making sure that customers are capable and enabled to actually buy what you're bringing to market. So if you're changing the dynamics around the category, if you're changing the affiliation and the framing of what you actually do by introducing this new product, that requires customers to think in new ways or buy in a different ways, I would start tapping into that before you were even releasing the product, right? Because it could be, for example, that you're launching a software product as a hardware company, for example. So that's a very different type of product, yes, but it's also a very different type of sort of purchase. So there's so many things around it that needs to be in place in order for customers actually to buy software. If you've been
Yeah.
sort of used to buying hardware from you. So have you primed them in a proper way, making it easy for them to buy and fully understanding what needs to happen. And then I think the priming is also an internal thing, Stefan. One thing we've seen again and again, and there's a lot of research on this, if you delay the internal enablement and sales training too much, until quote unquote the launch, and you reduce it to, hey, let's go offsite one day and I'll shower you with technical information, everything will be great. It can be a massive bottleneck for the launch. So I would never really sort of belittle that exercise. I would do it as early and as sort of impactful as possible. And that's a bit, we work a lot in this sort of internal priming piece as well, with training and enablement. And it's not just about what we're launching. It's also about priming and building capability around how is it bought, who are we selling to, how should we be selling, and then what we are selling is, I wouldn't say secondary, but it's not the only piece, right? And a lot of companies over-index on what, so showering technical information, talking about the product, but forget the who and the how, and then you leave it on the reps to figure all those things out. And some reps are gifted, some reps need a bit of support, and if they don't get that, they take the path of least resistance, which is typically the old product.
Yeah. I think that's very good practical advice, to just move up the internal training to before the launch instead of after the launch, because you'll also get all these like FAQ questions from your customers or your CS team that sits with customers every day. They already know what the customers are going to be asking when we're launching this thing.
Spot on. And what you're doing is you're building capability, you're building confidence, and if sales people are more confident, they sell more. And
that's really fun. So I guess it's about scanning your kind of internal ecosystem, about anybody who's related.
The readiness. It could also be in CS. Are we ready to take the inbounds? Or in other companies where logistics is a part, right? So doing a total scan of what needs to be in place for us to actually be able to sell and have a certain sort of level of activity here.
Yeah.
And not be too naive about those things. Yeah.
That's great. And is there anything people are marketers then doing anything wrong in this like pre-launch phase? Or are there anything they're kind of over-indexing on today that maybe doesn't matter that much?
Yes, I think one of the pet peeves is that a lot of marketeers are still defaulting to a checklist of assets that need to be done because we're launching a product.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, and we also spend a lot of time in the book talking about that, is you need to link your assets, channels, and activities to the go-to-market strategy. So a very basic premise. So we're working with a company, they're launching this new product. And when we kind of go into the weeds of who do we actually want to sell this product to, we found out that it was more or less sort of the beachhead segment. In order for us to get a bit of traction in the beginning, that's also part of the Campfire, is to, if you succeed with these 60 hospitals, we're in a really good place, right? Year one success is getting some sort of adoption in these 60 hospitals.
Yeah.
And then I go back to the marketing team and they start talking about all the videos we need to create and all these things. And I'm like, why do we need a video? This is not a mass market campaign yet. It might turn into that, but right now we're talking 60 hospitals. Couldn't it be that we develop much more of an account-based play, right? Where we more or less create a tailored pitch to each of these hospitals. We create maybe a sort of a generic landing page, but we create some tailored assets. We don't need to go through the motions of what's the tagline, tasting the words, fancy mass market campaigning and anything, right? So that's, I think is another thing where you disconnect what you're doing because you're running on autopilot from the go-to-market strategy, and especially the stage one go-to-market strategy. Where do we get traction fast to get credibility, momentum around the launch and experience, and then expand from there, right? That I think there's done. So to your point, Steph, I think there's too many companies are doing way too many assets, over-engineering assets that are not really used because they follow a checklist.
I guess it's kind of us also the inherent about how you would work, but you would probably also argue that there's a very well-defined list of companies you would be trying to target with your launch? How does this kind of I don't know if the book kind of talks about how to select what types of companies or accounts to be targeting with your launch.
No, I think what it talks to is maybe more the sort of philosophical or methodological way of going about it is to pick a niche or focus and then grow from there. So the classical sort of beachhead approach.
Yeah. Okay.
Instead of just launching out into the blue without clear sort of focus, and that goes for channel partners as well, to be frank, right? So when you are launching a product, sort of always ask yourself, what are the types of companies that would get the most value and would be most willing to buy this and pay the price that we would like them to sort of pay straight out of the gates to get traction and get credibility and get some ambassadors and get some logos, right? Then you layer on top of that additional sort of eccentric circles, right? And you expand your market. And it might be you'll end up being a total mass market product, but I would always try to sequence the launch to the best possible. What is the first wave of clients we need to win, and then add additional waves to it, right?
So I guess that's also the question then, kind of for a product launch. Is it should we focus on new customers, or should we focus on selling more to like existing customers?
Or do we say let's spend the first month just getting our existing customers on board to get the traction, momentum, learnings, credibility, logos, these things, and then move on, right? Yeah. So you always need new customers. Who does not want new customers?
Yeah, of course.
But it's more the sequence of things. To go for everyone at once, or do you put your energy into? And that's of course different. That's more on where you have big scarcity. A lot of the stuff we also do with companies is one of the things that are a very impactful channel, but where you have high scarcity is your sales reps. That's just a resource cap. You cannot visit all customers, right? So how do these people actually spend the first 2 months after the launch? What do you expect them to do?
Yeah.
Is it brief, go visit some customers or go visit the market? Or is it spend the first 3 weeks onboarding our most loyal customers, whatever it is, and then move on to, the sort of hangarounds, and then finally we go mass market. Let's try to acquire new customers, right?
Yeah, that's very good.
Intentional about that, I think, is the point there.
Yeah, intentional is a good word here. Like, I'm thinking like, okay, let's get the current customers to buy it. Then let's take all the closed lost deals and get back to them with the new messaging. And then once we've tried all the ones we've already talked to, then we can take a new part of the market that is people who've never heard about us before.
Yes, and that's of course, and the dynamics between those 3 sub-target groups definitely are very, very different. And the messaging and the tactics, and and it might be that it's mass market from the get-go. Who knows? And be intentional about it, especially when you have high sort of scarcity dependencies, which is often the reps and the sales force, right?
Very interesting. This is something we definitely are not too intentional about.
Now, it could be that you should have some consulting company help you on your next launch.
Yeah. I've heard you're great but expensive.
I heard you got funding, so
yeah. Yeah, that might be. Yeah. What else we got? Are there any kind of the topics in the book, Mikkel, we haven't covered as of?
I think that there's some of the interesting things is another topic, and maybe it's not so relevant to you guys in software scale-ups, but that's the question of ownership and accountability.
Yeah.
And think of like if you have a scenario where you have a global pharma company, medtech, industrial company, something like that, who goes to work and is measured by and relies on this launch to be a success. One of the things we're seeing is that some companies goes into a motion of a bit of a handover mentality. Handover a product to marketing, global marketing, develop assets. Those assets are then released for the local organization to make use of, and then the local organizations can sell to whoever they want to sell to, right?
Yeah.
So what we're preaching is that model is going to break somewhere on the chain, right? Either product has developed products that we actually don't need, That's a big issue. Marketing develops assets that are not fit for purpose for the markets, or markets put way too little energy and don't fully understand how to bring it to market, so they scramble and do just scrambling stuff, right? So ownership and accountability, but also organizing around the launch is extremely important, especially in very sort of global, complex markets. And being deliberate about it could be, for example, that this product is not a global launch, right? So have you done your homework? So we work with a medtech company, for example, where we installed the mechanism to do proper market by market go-to-market planning very early in the commercialization efforts. So you could map out where do we believe this product actually has sort of potential. So what you end up with is you never have a fully global launch. What you probably have is these 5 countries. If we succeed in these 5 countries, we're in a really, really good place. Okay, maybe we should get super close to those countries, set up a governance mechanism, bring them into how we develop assets, and then the long tail of countries, they get some sort of universal, very low burn, like, you know, they get the flyer, the sales presentation, and the landing page, right? So being deliberate about that, and then organizing in a way post-launch where you follow the money and you follow the potential, and that's how you run a launch in a global organization, right?
Yeah. Cool. We're just quickly running out of time, but I'm just trying to think about. We talked a little bit about it already. Is it case by case the metrics you would select to monitor for a launch, or are there some kind of metrics that are relevant for everybody to track? Obviously, there's the big one: how many resources did you put in, and how much revenue can you see coming out of that product? But below, maybe a bit more leading indicator. Are there any kind of metrics you'd think that people should be following on product launches?
I think some of the stuff we also preach in the book is, of course, to understand what are holding people back. Again, if the buying cycle and the types of customers that are in market is very low, you're not going to see a massive sort of through the roof revenue uptick straight out of the gates. Some categories see it like that, others don't. So be mindful of how is the product actually being adopted, and then look at some of your of course your lagging metrics, as you say, Stefan, the revenue and whatnot, aligned to that curve. But then I would say, what are some of the leading indicators to look at is maybe all the stuff that would precede them actually buying, right? Again, they're not in market, they would not buy now, it makes no sense. But if they were in market, would they then actually buy it, right? You can do that through customer research, looking at different types of preference, interest metrics, right? That would indicate if they went to market, they would buy. Are you seeing an uptick in some of those? Are you building the associations around the product you would like? And then I think another piece is, which I'm very keen on, is also some of the internal metrics. Are we confident and are we capable of selling this product? To what extent are we doing everything in our power to bring this product to market? So there is some sort of chain of metrics from lagging to leading you can set up depending on the product. But what's important is not to look at revenue alone.
Yeah, I guess as I said, there's also a lot of things that are a bit more yes/no questions. Did we train the sales team? Did we train the CS team? Does our beta testers get the messaging that we've created, and so forth?
Yeah.
Maybe just because I know you know so much about it, can we just before we stop, take a quick look at a quick talk about like how to actually test the marketing material, the marketing collateral that you make related to a product launch? Is there any kind of go-to things that you typically advise your clients to think about as they develop their assets for the launch?
One thing that is super tricky when it comes to asset testing is what are you actually testing for? I think I would rather, instead of saying let's test the assets, I would rather do let's test the sort of the product market fit in a way, because it's a combination of appeal of the message and the strength of the value proposition, the pricing strategy, to be frank, and the ability to actually buy it, right? We have clients where they paid a lot of money for other consultancies doing very theoretical work about the value potential of a solution, very extensive research-based view, and do sophisticated calculations on the value upside from this new product. And then it hits market, and then it simply does not materialize like that, and the doctors did not want to pay whatever the research said. So it's a tricky one. I think you can definitely do like messaging testing, whether it's focus groups or using platforms like GetWhy and all these things. There's a lot of things you can do. I just want to emphasize that messaging alone is not enough. It's something about bringing something to market, expressing a value proposition, asking for money. Will they transfer those money? That's the real test.
Yeah.
And that's why thinking about a launch as a sort of a sequential chain of steps, rather than either we are in market or we're not, or go to market or not, or we launch or we're not, but we're building experience, and we're testing our assumptions as part of how we go to market and commercialize. It's not a black and white thing. Now we launch or we don't launch, right?
Yeah.
And that also means that being open to changing the messaging totally in launch, I think is also, it's not beautiful. It's not it's going to be a little bit tricky to handle the conversation, but I think if that needs to be done, that's what needs to be done. Yeah. So a bit of a half-baked answer, Stefan, but
yeah, it's totally okay, and there's definitely no easy answer. I was just like, an intangible thing I thought about doing as you were talking is that on LinkedIn nowadays, it's actually quite easy to kind of monitor if you have a campaign, and whether that, let's say you have 1,000 companies defined as your ideal customer profile, you can actually run an ad that only contains information about this new product, and then you can check how many of the 1,000 ideal customer profiles that I was actually exposed to our new messaging. I think that's something tactical.
The only thing with those things is, I totally agree, Stefan, I would always include a call to action. So are they willing to invest time, energy, money, at book demo, something like that? So it's behavior you're tracking. You're not just tracking, very soft metrics. Because at the end of the day, will they invest their time in learning more about this product? I think that's a pretty good proxy metrics. You know it yourself. Can I get them on a call? Can I get those 20 minutes?
Yeah, much better.
Then you're in a pretty good place. So when you run a test like that, always have some sort of, I think, ask for an investment on their side. That's a true test, whether that's money, time, or something else. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Again, the leading lagging metrics.
Yeah.
Get the message in front of people, but I agree. Then it also matters that you can get them to do something.
Yeah.
Mikkel, if we are to kind of summarize the Campfire launch, is there like one or two things that you think is the most important thing that people, the B2B marketers that launch products today, take with them?
Well, if I had to create the market cube, one thing is please treat a launch like a commercialization product, not a campaign. A process, sorry, not a campaign.
Yeah.
There's so many levers. Pricing, extremely impactful.
Yeah.
It helps position products. It can help also model your adoption curve. Do you lead with a low price in order to, there's a lot of things there. That is definitely one. Please have a bit of patience. Don't fire off all your engines in the first 3 months and move on to the next one. Stick around a bit, and make sure you're building a fire and you're tending to that fire ongoingly. Albeit in a little bit slower burn mode, probably, right?
Yeah.
And then finally, I think the final piece is, once you're sort of beyond the hype phase of your product, how does this product then fit into your wider portfolio? When that product lands beyond the hype phase, how do you tell a story where there's not a lot of newness in the product anymore, but it's maybe part of a broader selection of things? Have you figured that out, or does it float out here like a launch or a separate story that does not connect well into the whole? I think, that's also something that is key.
That's a lot of great advice. Thank you, Mikkel. If people have been inspired by what you've said here today, or like just want to talk more with you and Kvadrant about how to do product launches and commercialization, what path do you want to send them on?
Just connect on LinkedIn. I think that's the best. Write me up. Yeah. Buy the book maybe. It's pretty cheap. We're not sort of earning a lot of money on it. It's part of our marketing engine. So I think that's the best route, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Mikkel. Really appreciate it. And I definitely spotted a few things in our product launch motion that, that I need to go take a look at again. And for those of you who've been listening or are watching live, just thank you so much for your time. And if you like what you're watching, then go subscribe to Attributed where you listen to these things. Mikkel, thank you so much for your time. And I guess I'll see you around in the neighborhood pretty soon.
Yeah, let's do it, Stefan. See you.